All right, guys. Good afternoon. This is our fifth screencast, I believe. This is going to be about the wars of religion. So obviously, this set of notes kind of immediately goes into the major wars, as you can see right here. The first one being the Habsburg and Valois Wars, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But remember, as Procopio and as I keep on saying, you gotta have to have the big idea here. So let's go ahead and provide a little context right now. And once again, you probably want to write some notes on what I'm saying because you're not going to see any of these things written here. So as a context, by now you should know a little bit about the Protestant Reformation and what the Protestant Reformation did. So the Protestant Reformation obviously kind of encouraged a lot of people, whether for political, social, or even sometimes economic reasons. There were multiple reasons why some people would stop looking towards the Catholic Church, or in some cases, a Holy Roman Emperor, who was the protector of Catholicism up in the north, or in that area called the Holy Roman Empire. There was a huge discussion about all of these Protestants, and obviously all these Protestants that pop up that want their own political rights, their own social rights, and again, as I said, economic rights. Well, some people in power, whether it be the Catholic Church or the Holy Roman Emperor, are going to have to lose some of that power. And we all know that people don't like losing power, and usually when one person wants to gain power, another person doesn't want to lose power, and there's going to be usually an issue. And so that's basically what this fight is. Throughout Europe from this time, 1559 largely to 1648, and 1648 is a very big date, but they will continue to fight wars based primarily upon religion. Religion is going to be the primary motive, the number one motive. Now, are there going to be some motives for political reasons, like to get away from the Catholic Church or get away from the Holy Roman Empire so I have some more independence? Of course they're going to have that. Are there going to be some economic reasons? For sure. But like I said, for the most part, the sole reason that these wars start, except for this first one that we'll talk about, is due to the rise of Protestantism, and the Catholic Church and people who are protectors of the Catholic faith basically are going to try to stop Protestantism. And when that happens, there's going to be a fight. There's going to be a war. I talked about this date. We're not going to talk about in this screencast, but Mr. Procopio is going to talk about a 30 years war, and it begins in 1618, and because it has 30 years, it ends in 1648. You might want to circle this key term and put this. This is the Treaty of Westphalia, and basically this treaty, again, if you don't know how to spell Westphalia, it's not that big of a deal because we're going to talk about it later, but this treaty basically ended the 30 Years' War, and from this point on in Europe, we're not going to have any wars of religion. They're going to be more on political issues or economic issues or military issues, not religious based. So that's why you see the wars of religion, and that's why they have such clear begin dates, and especially that end date. The end date is very important. Again, giving you a little context, some historians right now would argue that the Middle East and the largely Islamic and Muslim community right now is going through their own wars of religion. If you've been following anything in the news and the current events, we know that there's a group called ISIS. Basically, Islam, after the death of a prophet Muhammad, split into two branches. One branch following the Muhammad family line, basically the bloodline, and another one following his advisors. Those groups are called the Sunni and the Shia. Again, if I'm offending anybody, I'm not a Muslim scholar, so I do apologize. But that's the basic premise. So the Middle East is having this fight today. The Europeans had this fight in 1559 and in 1648. And it was, again, the two splits were the Protestants with all their different groups versus the Catholics. Again, we could equate this to the Sunni versus the Shia at certain levels. So some historians have argued that the wars of religion are happening in the Middle East right now, and there's a lot of parallels. So some students like to use current events to understand what's going on in the past, and that would be a good example. So after all that stuff, before I've even looked at any of these notes, what did you write down here? You probably, hopefully, wrote something about wars between Catholics and Protestants, and the Protestant Reformation started that. All right, so let's get into the dirty details. First thing, we have the Habsburg and Valois Wars. These are going to be two family names that are important. Unfortunately, we do have to remember some of these family names because some of these families are going to be in control of countries for long periods of time. So I know Mr. Procopio talked about the new monarchs. He talked about the Tudor family. We know that the family of Castile and Aragon have merged with those two families, creating the new country of Spain. So let's go ahead and name these two families. The Habsburgs, you might want to circle, maybe make a note here. If you can annotate or make a note over here. The Habsburgs are the Holy Roman Emperor family. I say the family because the Habsburgs for a long time have been elected into control. Remember that the Holy Roman Empire, all the princes get together and they vote on an emperor. And for many, many years, it has been the Habsburg family. And that's basically what they've gone with. The other group are the French, and the French right now, the name of their group is called the Valois. So basically, instead of it calling it the Habsburg-Valois Wars, it probably should be called the Holy Roman Emperor versus the French Wars, to give you an idea. So geographically, that's what you want to know about those two. There was a treaty. Here is a treaty. It's obviously French. It's Cateau-Cambrai. It's funny that the French don't really pronounce a lot of the words, but anyways, this ended the Habsburg-Valois Wars, which was kind of the wars based off of family. Like it says here, their political nature between France, again, France, the Valois over here. Oops, well, you guys get it, the Valois right here, and the Holy Roman Emperor, who were Catholic. These were Habsburg. It was interesting that you say it's political because, again, both were Catholic. And we're going to see the French do some crazy stuff where they're actually supporting Protestants, even though they're Catholic. And this is where you get the idea that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So it's interesting that these two people it was not religious fights. And that's why I said our wars of religion really won't begin until we talk about Spain and Philip II. But anyways, this is here, so let's talk about it. And that was it. It was pretty much political. France had kept the Holy Roman Empire from controlling all of Germany. Like I said, they kind of helped Lutheranism. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, but there are a group of Lutherans. They're called the Schmalkaldic League and the Holy Roman Empire. And France, trying to make the Holy Roman Empire weak, is going to support the Schmalkaldic League because the Schmalkaldic League are Protestants against the Holy Roman Empire, which is mainly, as it says up here, Catholic. So again, just a couple things are happening in the future, but not necessarily so important right now. Like I said, France is like kind of meddling in German affairs, kind of stopped them from unification early on. There's going to be a lot of divisions between Germany. The 30 Years' War is going to really destroy Germany. Ms. Procopio will talk about that in our next screencast, but this could be seen as a reason that France kind of meddling in Germany's affairs was a major reason why they were not unified. Anyways, we talked about Spain. Spain defeats France for the control of Sicily, Naples, and Milan. And they have kind of strong influence inside of the Italian city-states. And like we said earlier, there was a golden age, and that could be attributed a lot towards mercantilism in the open-end Atlantic, which you guys got my screencast, the idea that they were getting a lot more gold. All right. So from 1560 to 1648, wars would be fought largely over religious issues. Spain, we're going to talk about this guy down here, Philip II. He is incredibly Catholic, and he believes it is his job to re-Catholicize all of Europe and stop this Protestantism. He believes that he's charged with that, and that's his job. The French Catholics are going to try to squash a group called the Huguenots. The Huguenots are actually French Calvinists, so we can also know these as French Protestants. Most of France is Catholic. We know them as, if they go to church in France, it's called the Gallican Church. But they're a group of Protestants who really have enjoyed this idea of Calvinism. And for political and social reasons, they have basically supported Calvinism. And so they're known as Huguenots or French Calvinists or French Protestants. You should be able to interchange those words by now. The Holy Roman Empire wanted to make sure Catholicism was Germany. Remember that Martin Luther began in Germany. The Holy Roman Empire is given some rights, allowing princes to choose their religion at this time. And when that happens, they kind of say, you know what, we should try to let people do Catholicism. We should make people do Catholicism. The Netherlands have the Calvinists, and right now they're being owned by Spain. Spain, we talked about Philip II, obviously is going to want the Netherlands to be Catholic, not Calvinist, and so this is going to be a major issue. And lastly, we got a major war between England, Puritans, and Anglicans. Puritans believe that the Anglican form of Christianity is not pure. It's not the correct way. It's too Catholic-like, and kind of want to have a more Protestant-based form of religion, which kind of causes some issues. So there's kind of, again, a big picture. So if you couple the big picture that the rise of Protestantism and the rise of Protestantism, how it caused some problems with Catholicism and caused a war, well, then these are all of the individual wars and the individual areas that these wars occurred. Okay, so let's talk about the first one. It's letter A right here, Spain, and also letter D here, Spain. It's all about Spain. So we're going to talk about this guy, Philip II. Philip II, his father, yes, is Charles V. The Charles V are a group of Habsburgs. Philip II is a Habsburg. Charles V is the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire at this time, and he has a son who has just taken over Spain. So he believes that he needs to re-Catholicize Europe. These Protestants that have been allowed to do their thing is absolutely horrible, and he believes wherever Spain is and whatever Spanish lands he controls, first of all, the people should probably speak Spanish, and second of all, the people should be probably Catholic. So that's interesting. Now, remember that Spain has become incredibly wealthy and incredibly strong, largely to discovering the New World. They've gotten a lot of gold. They've increased their trade. The focus has changed from Italy being the primary trade and the primary store, or as I said in my earlier screencast, the primary Walmart. Well, that's moved to Spain, and because of their power, he now has the ability to basically, maybe try to re-Catholicize all of Europe, not just in his country, Spain. Next bold thing you want to know is Escorial. He created this palace. This is a picture of the palace. Inside this palace, supposedly he had his own office, and he was known as the Paper King. Kind of an interesting little story. He actually tried to control the New World, the Netherlands, New World meaning North and South America, so very much all Mexico and the Caribbean. Tried to control Spain, and he tried to control the Netherlands and Sicily and all those areas, all through paper. Basically, every decision that was ever made had to be sent to him via ship, and he would approve it here. So he's known as the King of Paper. What's the idea of the Escorial and the King of Paper? It's this. He has incredible power. He's incredibly organized, and his goal is to re-Catholicize Spain. Re-Catholicize all of Europe, excuse me. So with that being said, he believes that he has the power, he has the organization, he has a will to start a Catholic crusade, and that's what he's going to try to do all through Europe, is re-Catholicize all of Europe, stop the Protestants from happening. Here's one of the little battles that happen. Spain comes out, and he goes, first of all, we got these Islamic people, these Muslims called Turks in the Mediterranean. And our Christian merchants can't trade in the Mediterranean because they're scared that they might be raided and pillaged by maybe these Muslim pirates. And there was piracy during this time, guys. That's happening. So the Battle of Lepanto, this was a battle where Spain goes off to Greece, and they engage in a navy battle, and Spain wins. So with that being said, we kind of are moving the Turks back into the area of Turkey, away from Greece, and kind of getting closer and closer to what we call the Middle East today. The big thing here is what we call the Dutch Revolt. And this is kind of a short version of it. But just to give you heads up, there was in the Netherlands, there was an incredibly huge rise of Protestantism. Again, Calvinism. And we should probably talk about Calvinism. The idea of Calvinism, about why it was so easily spread. Like, why did people choose Calvinism as opposed to Lutheranism, Mr. Arimatsu? Like, why Calvinism is so much cooler than Luther? Luther's the one that came up with the original idea. Well, Calvin has that idea of predestination, and a lot of people really like that idea, saying that I'm the chosen one, or you're the chosen one, or you're not the chosen one. So they kind of use this for their own benefit. I think that's kind of what the appeal was. Also, Calvinists in certain areas are going to get more rights than others because they're going to fight for it. So a lot of people got drawn to Calvinism because they, whoa, hey, if I become a Calvinist, not Luther, I get these rights. That's awesome. So that's kind of a couple appeals as to why Calvinism is so important. What happens is there's actually, it's funny that these notes don't really go into this, but there was actually a revolt by the people of the United Provinces of the Netherlands. They basically, you might want to type this word over here. It's called iconoclast. I'm putting it right here. And I'll add this. This is the destruction of religious symbols. What these guys did is they basically started a big rebellion, and anything that was Catholic, they would destroy. So they're taking crosses and like burning them in the street. They're taking all that beautiful stained glass that tells the story of Jesus, and they're throwing rocks in it. They're taking pieces of the church and bricks and just trying to destroy the church. So what happened that caused Philip II to get so frustrated was this thing called the iconoclast, or the destruction of religious symbols. So what happens is Philip II sends people over there, and when they go over there, they go, "Hey, you can't do that," and ultimately there's a kind of a huge fight. The United Provinces of the Netherlands, which are the top 7, the northern 7, you'll see that at this time there were actually 17 different provinces of the Netherlands. It wasn't even a country yet. But the top 7 called themselves the United Provinces of the Netherlands. The bottom 10 called themselves the Spanish Netherlands. And what do you think, which one would like Catholicism? Obviously the ones in the south. You're starting to notice a little bit of a pattern. Everything that seems to be in the south seems to be Catholic, and everything that goes to the north seems to be more Protestant, and that's true. So in this case, Spanish Netherlands, which is today Belgium, and this is how modern-day Belgium is created, actually, they stay under Catholic control. They remain Catholic. But the 7 to the north create themselves, they call themselves the Dutch Republic, and they begin fighting Philip II. And it's only because of receiving aid from Elizabeth I from England that Philip II is not able to go all the way to the Spanish Netherlands and basically kick the butt of these guys and say, hey, you need to be Catholic. You're not allowed to just go in and start destroying religious things. And by the way, Protestantism isn't cool. So if it wasn't for England and Elizabeth I, he would have never been able to make it. By now, you should know your map. So you should know that if you're looking at my hands, and I'm going to do it just like it is a map, this would be Spain, and up here would be England. You know that in order to get to the Netherlands, you have to cross in between England and France. It's a very close place. I mean, England almost touches France. I think it's only 15 miles difference, 20 miles difference. It's not that much at all. So when people would pass through, you'd have to get past England to get to the Netherlands. Well, Elizabeth I makes sure that that doesn't happen. We're going to talk about later, but basically she sends out some forces, there's a huge storm, and the Spanish fleet is destroyed. So Spain is never able to stop the United Province of Netherlands from rebelling and to stop them from having a iconoclast. He's never able to stop the Protestants from doing what they do. But the Spanish Netherlands pledge allegiance to the Catholic lands, and they're totally good. So I guess what's interesting here is that the Dutch closed Scheldt River, and basically that's another huge reason that Amsterdam becomes such a strong trading center. Not only is it because of the independence of Spain, not only are they a great banking area, which you learned in our last screencast, but in addition to that, they are starting to have more control of the oceans and more merchants out there. So that's that. All right, so let's go ahead and go to Spain versus England, which is kind of an idea of this Dutch revolt. Remember that Spain is never really able to really go over and control the Netherlands when they fight because of the involvement of England. So let's figure out how England gets involved in this mess. All right, so there's Queen Mary Tudor, which is actually Philip's wife, Philip II's wife, and she tried to reimpose Catholicism in England. When she dies, Queen Elizabeth I says, you know what? I'm going to make a Elizabethan settlement. And basically this settlement says, you know what? You can be Protestant or Anglican again. So we have England going back before Anglican and Catholicism, depending on which queen is going on. Later, I guess Elizabeth later refused Philip's request for marriage. So because Elizabeth is very pro-Protestant, obviously, she's against Catholicism since she reversed Mary's course, and Mary wanted to be everybody to be Catholic. So she's very, very Protestant. And when Philip seeks revenge for England's support for the Dutch and making England Catholic, he tries to basically start a major invasion in 1588. He believes that if he can take out England, he can also move on to the Netherlands and therefore solve this major problem that's happening in his lands that he controls. So the Spanish Armada comes. The Spanish Armada is incredibly famous because this is the name of the Navy. And remember that at this time, they had a lot of power. They got a lot of wealth. And so this is actually one of the largest fleets. It had some of the biggest ships, was basically the biggest Navy of the world at that time. And so Spain and Philip II, with their big, big Navy, are going, dude, no, we can definitely take these guys on. So they go over and they try to invade England. And what happens is that England's smaller and better armed Navy are able to move in between the ships and are able to destroy the larger ships much faster. Also, a lot of people would say, you might want to write this over here, that there was a major storm and the little boats were able to maneuver the storm a lot better than the larger boats, and a lot of boats were destroyed. A lot of the Spanish Armada's boats, Spain's boats, were destroyed in that storm. A lot of religious people said it was called the Protestant wind. I mean, most historians call it the Protestant wind, so you might want to write that down over here. And the Protestant wind was the idea that God had sent a storm to destroy all the Catholic Spanish Armada ships. So kind of, again, throwing religion and God into a war battle, which is always interesting. But anyways, that happened, and because of the ships, because of the Protestant wind, Spain's Spanish Armada is completely destroyed. They never are able to really go all the way over to the Netherlands to stop them from happening, and so the Netherlands will eventually get their independence and able to do their own thing, and it kind of begins the decline of Spain as a major power. So we saw the rise and fall in Spain real quickly. From these separated kingdoms to centralized with the new monarchs, to going out to the New World and gaining a lot of power, to basically wasting that power on their army. So the next thing is called the French Wars, and that's kind of like one of the big ones, guys. So we kind of talked about the French. The French right now have a group of Calvinists called Huguenots, and we need to understand that, because right now, therefore, we have a bunch of Catholics and we have a bunch of Protestants that have been living in the same country called France for a while. And how is this going to result? So we'll talk about it. So there is a horrible death of Henry II in 1559. He dies actually in a jousting tournament. So he's on a horse and he hits somebody, and one of the splinters, I think, actually goes into him and causes him to die. So he dies, and because of that, there's not really a male heir that's ready to go. There is a woman, the mother, and the wife of Henry II, Catherine de' Medici, from the same family, the Florence family. But she has very young sons and daughters, not ready to be kings or queens, so she's kind of taking control right now. Well, everybody's like, who's going to be next king? Is it going to be the Medicis? Is it going to be another family? Who's going to do this? And basically, a three-family fight begins. So here are the three French kings. They're dominated by their mother, like I said, who tried to make Catholic control of France. Between 40 to 50% of nobles became Calvinists. So most of your upper class are now Calvinists. That means most of your upper class is not Catholic, but Calvinist. And again, a Calvinist from France has a very special name. They're called Huguenots. Now, most of these guys live in an area called Bourbon. And that's kind of the last name of the king that's going to win. We're going to have the Bourbons go. So the Valois family right here will be gone, and the Bourbons will come up. But let's go ahead and talk about the story first. So here's those reasons I talked about. It's not really a religious reason, but here I can see a political reason. It says here, sought independence from the crown. That means they wanted to do their own thing. Also, it caused a lot of disorder in France. And I guess the Bourbons, I didn't know this until I read these, the Bourbons were actually next in line to get the throne if they didn't produce a male heir. There's also a third family, so let's go ahead and name the families now. So we have one family, the Valois family. These guys are Catholic. They're already in control. They're scared that they might lose control because all of their sons and daughters are not really strong. We have the Bourbons, who represent the Protestants, and then we have the crazy Catholics, the Guise family. All right. So, and then you notice that they're totally anti-Bourbon. Why? Because the Bourbons are Calvinist or Protestant. We already know that Protestants are not going to like Catholics. So there we go. So all these fightings happen, and it starts in 1562, and there's actually multiple wars that go on. But a major event that happens is the St. Bartholomew Day Massacre. So there was a deal made between the Valois family, which was Catholic, and the Huguenot Henry of Navarre, who is from Bourbon. And they said, you know what we're going to do is we're going to get married. Now we're going to have a Catholic marry a Protestant, and hopefully everybody will get the signal in France that it's okay to be Protestant, it's okay to be Catholic, we should have peace. When that happens, though, basically the day before that this happens, the Henry of Guise, another Henry, remember that the Guise going up here is ultra-Catholic, sends a assassin and murders somebody in the Huguenot party the night before the wedding. So because of that, I understand why Catherine de' Medici did this, but she kind of has this moment where she doesn't think she can trust the Bourbons anymore. She doesn't think she can trust the Huguenots, even though it was Henry of Guise who had a leader who was murdered. I know it's very interesting, but probably some kind of Facebook rumor. Remember, they didn't have Facebook, but probably there was just bad news. And Catherine de' Medici goes, you know what? If they're going to threaten us through violence and murder, we're going to threaten them. And so she kills over 20,000 Huguenots. Inside of your big, thick textbook, there's a crazy picture of a French square where they're basically just hanging all of these Huguenots. Very, very ugly way. So the massacre then initiated the War of the Three Henrys. Why is there three Henrys? Well, we got the one, Valois, the Catholic one in control, who's Henry II, just died. We have the Guise family, the ultra crazy Catholics, who have just sent an assassin to kill a Bourbon or a Huguenot or a French Protestant. All right. So just as a quick story, what happens is Valois and the Bourbons find out that the Guise guy probably started it, so they come in and they kill the Guise, the Henry the Guise guy. After that, there's another crazy Catholic that says, oh my God, Valois, I can't believe you took the side of the Protestants and killed a Guise guy, so we're going to send you. There's a crazy monk that kills a Valois. And so after all this death, there's only one guy left, and that's the Bourbons. And this is how he gets power. So we have just changed the name from the French Valois to now the Bourbons. So we have Henry IV. He is a Bourbon. Remember, he just got power. He's known as Henry of Navarre. The kingdom that he's from is Navarre, and he is a Bourbon king. Like he says, one of the most important kings in French history. He basically stopped the French civil wars on religion and started a way of basically being what's called an absolutist. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but this is kind of like the new monarchs, where an absolutist is really trying to centralize all power on him. Henry is known as a politique. The reason why is that during this fight, remember that the only person alive is the Bourbons. And what happens is Philip II, remember Philip II from Spain, sends an army into Paris and circles Paris. And when the Bourbons and Henry IV of Navarre, the new king, comes into Paris, he knocks on the door. He's, all right, I'm coming to Paris. And then out comes Philip II in Paris. And Philip II goes, hey, what are you doing? I'm in Spain. I'm right next door. We can't have a Protestant king. And basically Philip II, remember being a Catholic king from Spain, goes, you know what? If you don't go to Catholicism, I'm burning all of Paris down. I'm just going to burn, loot, and burn this place down. And so Henry says, you know what? I don't think that's worth it. I don't think being a Protestant is worth the destruction of Paris. So I am going to convert to Catholicism. So remember, he started off as a Protestant. He converts to Catholicism. And the reason why he says is Paris is worth a mass. There's also another historical saying peace is worth a mass. But again, the idea was Paris or peace is worth being Catholic over. I don't really care about my religion as much as I care about the political stability. And that's exactly what politique is. You can see it right here. I don't care who I am or what it is, as long as my country remains safe and gets more power. And that's why you can understand it's kind of Machiavellian, because if you think of Machiavelli, it doesn't matter as long as the ends, what I get at the end, justify the means. How I get there and what I do, if I double cross people, if I say I'm a Protestant 1 second, then say I'm a Catholic the next second, it doesn't matter as long as my country becomes very, very strong. So that's a very big word. I could see this as a big idea because, man, that word pops up, politique. So we have Henry IV. Remember that he started off as a Protestant. I think I've said that 85 times now. So if you get that wrong in class, I apologize, but I've said that like 12 times. So we have a Protestant king, but he has just become Catholic. And so obviously, if you are a Protestant, you're like, whoa, hold on. We fought a war. There were 3 Henrys. One won. He was Protestant, and now he's turning to Catholic. Oh, great. Now we have a Catholic king. What's going to happen to my rights? And Henry the Bourbon, again, being a politique, caring about his country a little bit more than his religious beliefs, even though he just turned to being Catholic, goes, you know what? We're going to create an Edict of Nantes. And here he says, you know what? You're allowed to be a Huguenot. You're allowed to have some religious toleration. Now, what's funny is he only gives this to the Huguenots, only the French Calvinists, and only the nobles. He does not give this to Lutherans, Anabaptists, or any other groups, only Calvinists. He allows them to worship public. He allows you to worship, but he doesn't allow you to do it publicly. Also, he gave Huguenots here, but you know what's interesting? It doesn't say kind of the two important things. The two important things I would write down right here is this. Number one, they were given the right to worship Calvinism, although not in public, they were still allowed given that right. That's a big step. The second and even crazier moment, and again, this is why I say it may not be religious, that many Huguenots did this, it may be political, was they're allowed to create their own forts and their own towns and start raising their own armies. I think that's very interesting because Henry IV has now not centralized power, but actually decentralized power. Because now instead of having a national army that the king is in control, we have all of these little private armies and all of these little cities that are from Protestants. So you can see how that might be a major issue later. I mean, imagine you're a king and you don't have your own army, but all these other little states and little governors have more power than you do. You could probably see that the next king is not going to be so happy that Henry IV allowed them to raise their own army. So these are interesting ideas, these things that I'm doing, but the two most important things is, number one, they're allowed to do Calvinism. Number two, they're allowed to have their own forts and armies, which is a major issue. So that is the war of basically what we call the wars of Catholic Spain. You can see that Spain was involved in the Netherlands. He was also involved in England. He was also involved in the Middle East with Turkey. So those are the three places. Remember that although he's kind of involved in the Netherlands, he never gets there due to the defeat of the Spanish Armada into England. And also, I just spoke about the war in France. And so hopefully you know it's called the War of the Three Henrys, and hopefully you know why now. Our next screencast, we're going to get into a much longer and much more complex one called the 30 Years' War, and Mr. Procopio will do that one for you. So that'll be our next screencast. But again, just to review, I kind of like how I did this our last screencast. I'm going to do it every time. By now, you should know what was the big reason why all these religious wars popped up. You should know where Spain fought and why they fought there and what were the effects of those wars. And you should also know the causes, the effects, and also the results and maybe larger ramifications. I know that's the word effects, but even grander effects of the war in France. Why were there a war between three Henrys? What was the result of that war? And how is that going to cause issues for the later? So hopefully you did that. I know that I sped through a couple of things. Your job is to read every single note, highlight everything, but I'm pointing out the important things that might be on the test. So hopefully you have noticed a couple of very important moments in there. So keep studying, keep working hard. That May date is coming up quick. So keep working, guys, and we'll see you in class.